waiting room is just kind of joining this main session. I still see the numbers kind of.
I don't hear anything.
Can everybody else hear me okay? Okay, great, thank you. Still seeing the numbers tick up just a little bit in the room, but it seems like most of us have been able to join. So I'm going to get started since we're into the 6:30 time slot. So again, welcome to the November 4th second unit information webinar.
Well, I don't know how to get any volume.
My name's Hfa Program. I work for the County of San Mateo with the housing initiative called Home for All. I'm joined by my colleague, Caleb Smith, who will co-present with me tonight and also is managing the Zoom logistics. Thank goodness for that. Home for All, for those of you who don't know, is led by supervisors Carol Groom and Warren Slocum. And it's a program that uses a variety of strategies to help close San Mateo County's jobs housing gap. As of 2019, the jobs housing gap numbered 11 jobs for every one home in San Mateo County. Home for All facilitates community conversations and public engagement around housing topics, shares best practices for housing policy and funding solutions, and supports innovative housing solutions like second units. And we're also delighted to be joined tonight by planning staff from several cities as well as the unincorporated county. We have with us tonight representatives from Brisbane, City of San Carlos, City of Menlo Park, City of East Palo Alto, the Town of Woodside, and the County of San Mateo. If you come from these cities or from unincorporated county, I know the planners look forward to meeting with you in the breakout groups later this evening. So tonight we're offering this webinar to share the general resources that the county and its partners have developed in order to support homeowners in constructing second units and to provide an easy way to connect with the city planners in the areas that you might be thinking about building in. We are delighted to see so many folks come out and spend the evening with us. Thank you. Before we get into the city-specific breakout groups, we're going to spend some time going over general information and resources that might be helpful. In this main session, we'll define what a second unit is, why more people than ever before are building them, discuss some of the second unit options that residents have, and explain some of the tools and resources that are available to homeowners building their project. Then you'll be able to choose one or more breakout groups to visit for an overview of the rules and process for building a second unit in each city. And you'll have the opportunity to ask questions directly from staff. Before we dive into those details, I want to take a quick moment for some Zoom housekeeping. If you have questions during the main session or during the breakouts, you can use the chat function to submit them directly to us. Please keep yourself muted unless you're asked to unmute to make sure that everyone else can hear things clearly. Tonight's general session will be recorded and we'll make slides available on the Second Unit Center website. And also we want to hear directly from you during this event. So you'll see 3 opportunities come up on our Zoom presentation where we'll have a chance to hear directly from you on some key questions. When you see these questions appear, you'll have the opportunity to scroll through the options and select as many options as apply. And with that, we'll go right into our first Zoom poll. We'd love to hear why you're interested in building a second unit. What has brought you here tonight? And on your screen should have popped up poll number 1 with the options. And again, you can choose more than one. Housing for family, rental income, housing for the community, to move into the second unit one day, housing for caregivers, and not sure yet. I see the responses coming in. Thank you for sharing those with us. give it another minute for anyone to respond that hasn't had a chance to yet. Again, thank you so much. What I'm seeing so far is that almost half of the group tonight is interested in housing for family, about a third for rental income or to use the unit for themselves someday, and also not sure yet. And then around a quarter of us are seeing the value of housing for the community, as well as housing for caregivers or on-site assistants. All very kind of a common experience for many of us here in San Mateo looking at ADUs. So thank you so much. It looks like we've plateaued on the responses, and we'll stop the poll. Again, thank you for participating in that. That helps us know who we're talking to and who we're building resources for. Now let's get into a little bit about second units. Second units have a lot of names. You may have seen them or heard them called granny flats, backyard cottages, in-law units, accessory dwelling units, also known as ADU, or garage units. And the presenters today may use some or all of these terms. In the county, we've decided to use second units for all of our resources and all of our work. No matter what you call it, a second unit must include the following. Must have a kitchen, bathroom, and a sleeping area. Second units may share a lot with a single family home or an apartment building. They may also be attached to the main home. Often these are called junior ADUs or JADUs. A little bit more about junior second units. They are always located inside the main home, and they're not bigger than 500 square feet. And currently the owner must live in either the junior second unit or in the main house. Junior units still have their own cooking facilities and a separate entrance, but they are allowed to share the bathroom with the main house. As you can see, there are many different kinds of second units. Some are attached to the main house, like an extension. Some are more detached cottages, while others are converted garages or carved out of the main house. Each type of second unit has its own advantages. Similar to what we saw in the first Zoom poll earlier tonight, we know a lot of folks are interested in second units for several reasons. Second units are a great way to affordably house friends and family, whether that be an older relative or a kid returning from college. We also know that many people find second units to be a great source of rental income, and they can also help build wealth by increasing the value of your home. Second units are also a great way to help the community by increasing the supply of affordable homes. Second units tend to be naturally affordable. And indeed, they also help the environment. They tend to use less energy and water than a full-sized home. And by housing more workers closer to their jobs, we reduce the traffic congestion and the climate pollution that come with long-distance commutes. And finally, we see that the use of a second unit evolves as the needs of a family change. A unit for an older relative might become a rental unit before housing a boomerang child and eventually serving as a retirement option for the original builders. And here is a chart that shows the second unit permit applications issued in San Mateo County over the last 7 or 8 years. As you can see, there are some compelling reasons to build a second unit, and combined with recent changes in state law, we've seen a significant increase in the number of permits that people are receiving to build second units. We're also seeing a whole industry grow up around supporting the construction of second units. So there are more architects, contractors, lenders, prefab builders, and others that are active in this space than there were a few years ago. This means that there are more options out there as you seek to build a team for your project. And we have arrived at our Zoom poll number 2. We'd now like to better understand what you see as some of the main obstacles to your second unit project. Again, you can see it's exactly the same as the first question. You can answer you can respond with multiple answers. permits and approval process, building process, cost financing, issues with your property or with your neighbors, the concept of being a landlord, ongoing maintenance. These are some of the challenges that we've heard, or concerns that we've heard from folks that over the years, and we'd love to get your sense of whether these are yours at this time as well. And it looks like many of you are in the right place, because with the overwhelming response on permit and approval process, I hope we can provide some clarity and comfort on that end tonight. Building process and cost and financing. Oh, another issue is parking. I see that come across in the chat. Thank you. Appreciate that. We may have plateaued on this. The answers came in really quickly. Thank you so much. This is great insight for us as we go forward. And yes, Jill, there's a team here from the city, from the town of Woodside. Some of the deeper questions we can answer in the chat, but the town of Woodside is here for a city breakout. So thanks again for answering that poll. We can certainly see how these challenges can feel daunting and pose barriers to moving your project forward. We'd like to share with you some resources that have been developed by the county and our community partners that aim to help with these challenges. The county has been developing best practices, simplifying the process, and convening people through our homeowner resource fairs and our website, secondunitcentersmc.org. And don't worry, we'll put that URL up in the subsequent slides as well. But we will also share with you how floor plans have been developed that are being pre-approved by certain cities and are available free of charge. And there's a brand new grant program through the state that can help cover the cost of your project as well. Thank you, Caleb. So the URL is in the chat, and it's also here on the next couple of slides. All the tools and resources that we mentioned tonight can be found on the county's Second Unit Center website, and that URL is secondunitcentersmc.org. One of the resources on the website is a cost calculator, which you basically input some of the data in the fields around what you're thinking of building, and it allows you to get a ballpark cost for the different types and sizes of second unit projects. Now, a little known fact, during COVID, prices have gone in all directions. So our cost calculator was developed pre-COVID and reflects construction costs from then. We have not updated it during COVID, but we will update it after things have stabilized. So take the cost with a little grain of salt or a medium one, and add what percentage you think makes sense, or check it with the contractor, but the tool is there to play with. And then we've also published a couple of books, a second unit workbook and an idea book, also available on the website. The workbook features a step-by-step guide to the second unit process, and the idea book includes stories of homeowners in our county who have successfully completed a second unit project. There's access to their floor plans, their photos, and many other details about these real-life projects in our community. We hope you'll take a look at both of these resources. And they're both printable in PDF, which is the version you're seeing the screenshot of here. They're also available in Spanish and a download at home version as well. In 2019, the county partnered with Redwood City to hold a second unit resource fair. We hosted a variety of architects, contractors, lenders, and other second unit professionals, as well as over 400 attendees from all corners of our county and beyond. We encourage everyone to sign up for our email list to receive a notification when we plan our next second unit resource fair. We're hoping that would be sometime in 2022. And a list of vendors and organizations that attended our 2019 resource fair is available on our website. I mentioned tools developed by our community partners, and this is one of them. The Housing Endowment and Regional Trust of San Mateo County, also known as HART, has free architectural plans for second units, including studio, 1-bedroom, and 2-bedroom designs. You can download these plans for environmentally friendly, all-electric second units from their website. And that's here on the slide, heartofsmcadu.org. And we have arrived at our third Zoom poll tonight. At this time, we'd like to ask where you have found or plan to find second unit information. And with this poll, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Caleb Smith, invite him to go through the next part of the presentation, take it from here, and then transition us into the breakout groups. Caleb?
Thank you, Hfa. I appreciate the wonderful start we've had tonight. Hopefully this is all very useful information. And we also want some very information from y'all now. We know that y'all are getting information in a variety of places as you think about your second unit project. And we want to hear from you about where you're getting that information the most, because we want to make sure that as new resources become available for homeowners here in San Mateo County, we want to make sure that we're successfully connecting with you and your neighbors to make sure that as many people as possible are able to take advantage of those resources. So we've listed several of these different options on this slide. We'll just take a few more seconds on this poll as people continue to fill it out. And yes, city emails would count as government materials. Well, just going to take a couple more seconds. Okay, nearly there. All right. Thank you. So we're seeing that word of mouth and government materials are two popular answers. This tracks very closely with our other webinars. So a lot of neighbors talking to neighbors, friends talking to friends. And yes, it looks like a variety of other sources are also being very useful. So we appreciate this feedback, and it'll help inform our efforts moving forward. And we will share the information about the website for the second unit website, second unit center website, as well as the HART website in a minute. Oh, thank you, Effie, who's already dropped that in the chat. Perfect. Now we want to talk real quick about a couple of other topics that we often hear a lot of interest about. So those are ADU finance, sorry, second unit finance, because we know that second units can be a fairly expensive project, all things considered. And some homeowners are able to pay for it fully, but not all of them are without access to finance. So homeowners finance their second units in several different ways. We find that various kinds of home equity loans, like a cash out refinance, where you renew your existing mortgage for a higher amount than it is right now, and then you use the added value of that mortgage to pay for the second unit, as well as other equity loans like a home equity line of credit or a second mortgage, which can function a little bit more like a flexible draw on your home equity or a new mortgage on top of your existing one. Those seem to be the most popular options that are right now. I'll also note for anyone who's trying to take a picture of this slide, I'm about in a moment, I will drop a link into the chat, which links to a document that a nonprofit called the Hfa Coalition came up with, which goes into a lot more detail about all the options that are listed on this screen. So in addition to home equity loans, we also see that some homeowners are instead interested in things like construction loans, which have sometimes a little bit higher interest rates. However, they can be a good option for homeowners with less home equity because construction loans are often able to take into account the added value of the project when they're looking at home equity. And we see there's other options that people will look at depending on the combination of income and home equity that they have in their circumstance. So those are listed on the screen. And I will drop in the chat in just a moment links to the full-length guide. And also in the chat, I'm linking to another program that we thought would be of interest. The state of California has heard that many homeowners could use a little bit of help in financing their second unit project. And they have actually made a grand total of over $80 million available in state grants. And these state grants of up to $25,000 per project are going to help reimburse homeowners for what's called the pre-development costs associated with their projects. The pre-development costs is pretty much anything that you do right before you start building. So if you need to get a site survey, you need to hire an architect to design your second unit, permit application fees for your city, all of those count as pre-development costs. If you keep receipts, then under this program that the state of California is offering, then if you take a construction loan with one of their approved lenders, and there's a list of those approved lenders on their website, then they will reimburse you for up to $25,000 of those pre-development costs. Of course, not everyone has to pay $25,000 of pre-development costs, in which case they'll reimburse you up to the pre-development costs that you can show. So for the Cal HFA program, as they call it, they are looking for a little bit of a requirement to make sure that this is getting to folks who could use some assistance. So the requirements for this program, once again, is that first off, you need to get a construction loan of any amount from one of the participating lenders, which are linked to on their website. And right now, it's a fairly small list of lenders because the program was very much started recently. So you're some of the first homeowners to hear about it in San Mateo County. And you get a loan from one of those lenders, and then you can then qualify in one of three ways. Either if your income for your family was less than $107,000, then you qualify based on just on that, no matter where you live, no matter anything else. If your income was your household income was less than $248,000, and you live in what's called a qualified census tract, which is considered to be a relatively disadvantaged area, parts of East Palo Alto and Menlo Park, for example, then you also qualify based on where you live and the income. Or if you have that income of $248,000 and your combined loan to value is more than 80%, then you also qualify. Now, combined loan to value sounds like some jargon if you haven't taken a loan out recently. And that is, in a nutshell, the total value of your loans against your house divided by the value of your house. So if you currently have a $700,000 mortgage and $1 million house, you take out a $200,000 loan to pay for your second unit, then you have $900,000 worth of loans and $1 million of home value. So your combined loan to value of all of your loans would be 90%, $900,000 divided by $1 million. So this is really something that could help qualify a lot of people, we think, because if you are having difficulty qualifying for a loan, then if you have a home equity challenge, then this grant would most likely qualify for you. And then I'll also just note that if the list of lenders right now is short for this program, they're continuing to add more lenders. So by the time that you're actually in a position where you're going to potentially want to borrow money to help pay for your project, they will hopefully have a longer list. And before moving on from this topic, I got a quick question. What is a qualified census tract? There's a map. There's a map that's available on their website. It is specific neighborhoods that are considered disadvantaged, that bureaucrats in the government looked at a map, they looked at some criteria, they said these neighborhoods are disadvantaged. And that's how they came up with qualified census tract. And if you visit the Cal HFA website, which I dropped the link into the chat, and I will do so again, then you can find a link to a list of those qualified census tracts. You also can probably Google them and you'll find your way there. And thank you, Rachel, for putting a map of qualified census tracts. That is very helpful. So one more thing on second unit finance I wanted to cover was we got a question earlier about property taxes, which is always a good question. So how will building a second unit affect your property taxes? And the answer is that for most people, your property taxes will increase, but they will only increase based on the value of the second unit that's been added by that second unit. So going back to our example earlier, if you have $1 million house and you build a second unit that is valued at $200,000, then that's just $200,000 on top of whatever your property tax valuation was under Prop 13. So if you bought that house a long time ago, and if that house at market is worth $1 million, but your property tax basis is $600,000, then your new property tax basis will be $600,000 plus $200,000 equals $800,000. You will not lose your existing Prop 13 basis. So that's something that we sometimes hear concerns about, and it's good that we're going to be able to qualify. And a question, can you qualify for a grant retroactively for an ADU that's already been built? You would probably want to check with Hfa about that. I think, to my understanding, you need to get a loan to build the second unit. So if the second unit's already been built, then you can't get a construction loan for it. If it's an existing second unit that needs to be legalized, maybe it didn't have a permit, and if you have to do some construction related to that, then you should check with Hfa. You might be able to qualify for a loan for that. So that's a good question. So moving on, that's the main content around our second unit finance segment. That you can also drop questions into the chat. And once again, the link to the Casita Coalition's guide around second unit finance includes lots of detail from a neutral source in a handy pro-con format. Before we go into breakout rooms, we also want to mention just a couple of other things we thought you might be interested in. If you're thinking about doing a second unit, we know many homeowners are also interested in doing other renovations around their house. If you're interested in doing that, we encourage you to check out the County of San Mateo's BayRen program, which helps connect homeowners with rebates for energy efficiency upgrades to their house, which can be all sorts of handy improvements that are good for the planet and can be good for the wallet. If you want to find out more, you can visit bayrenresidential.org. Also, we know that some of you might be interested in the topic of housing more broadly, because there's important conversations that are upcoming around the future of housing in San Mateo County, including your city. There are some upcoming webinars and discussion opportunities that are coming up and are being sponsored by the Let's Talk Housing Initiative, a collaborative of cities all across San Mateo County. The two next webinars from the Let's Talk Housing sequence are on November 10th, which is talking about housing and climate change, and then on December 1st, which is talking about how a variety of community priorities fit together with the future of housing in the county. So if you're interested in the future of housing in San Mateo County, we encourage you to visit letstalkhousing.org to find out more and sign up for these events. So we are now going to be moving into breakout room.
Recording this presentation. All right, so our agenda for today, I'm just going to show you some of our ADU websites, some helpful links that you'll need if you're thinking about building an ADU, if you're a contractor submitting ADU building permits, you just want general information, that sort of thing. I'll go into a little bit, like I said, of the nuanced regulations in Menlo Park, and then I'll move to when ADUs require discretionary review. Spoiler alert, it's not often, but there are some times that we can require use permits for ADUs. And then we'll go into our question and answer period. So first off, just want to take you through some websites Some of you may know we are in the process of moving to a new website platform. So I'll show you the current website and then show you the new website. All the information is the same. It just looks a little bit different and is hopefully a little bit more user-friendly. So if we move to our current website, can you all see this, or are you all still on the presentation? Just curious.
Still in the presentation.
Still in the presentation. All right. Let me do this. How about now?
Looks good.
Looks good. All right. So this is our existing ADU website. This just gives an overview of what an ADU is, general requirements as far as setbacks, whether, what kind of cooking and sanitation facilities are needed, the review process, and then this breaks down into single-family residential districts and multifamily and mixed-use districts. The requirements are fairly similar, but they are a little bit different depending on if you have a single-family or multifamily property. These are generally pretty helpful. I've found and answer a lot of the questions for ADUs. I'll hop over to our new website. Like I said, it's all the same information. Just looks a little bit different. There we go. So different format, more drop-down menus. But again, the information is all the same as far as the regulations. You can pop over to single-family ADU requirements. We are in the beta testing for this website, so we recognize that some of the links may not work, but we're working on it. One of the helpful links on here, if you are a contractor, architect, representing a property owner, applicant, the building division has a step-by-step process on the website as to how to apply or how to submit a building permit application. It's pretty simple. During COVID, we moved to all online submittals. So you don't have to come into City Hall with hard copy plans anymore. It's really sort of streamline the application process. So they have their step-by-step guide on the website. They mention ACA. Acela is our permit record system, and it has a public-facing side of the program. It looks like this. In order to submit an application, you'll have to create an account with the city on the ACA, on the city's ACA portal. Pretty simple. Just create a new login. I'll log in to mine. This should show all of your permits that you have active that you're linked to. And then if you go to building and then create an application right here, it'll provide general direction for the documents that are necessary and that you need to upload in order to submit the application. And then finally, I will take you to our municipal code chapter 16.79. This is the actual accessory dwelling units chapter of our code. This gives the nitty gritty of all the development regulations and sometimes a bit of planning and law jargon. So like I said, we tried to condense the information here in the code chapter, make it easier to read for the everyday person, and put it on our ADU websites.
Chris, could you review the information about parking? Menlo Park, because of the no overnight parking on the streets, this provides some real challenges if you've got a detached garage already with a driveway and figuring out how to actually park vehicles for a second unit.
Right. So that's a good question. I think I might hold off until the very end. I'll come back to that as the first question. Just as a teaser, the state law is actually pretty restrictive on what cities can do as far as requiring parking for ADUs specifically. There's a number of situations where an ADU may be exempt from requiring a parking space. I know in practice that can be difficult given Menlo Park's off-street parking requirement and prohibition on overnight street parking, which is something we may eventually have to look into. But I'll come back to that question at the end. But it is a good question. Okay, so ADUs in Menlo Park. I kind of wanted to boil down some of the questions we get pretty often from designers, property owners, architects on some of Menlo Park's more nuanced regulations. So first, the county, as Caleb mentioned, state allows up to one ADU and a JADU. In Menlo Park, you're actually allowed up to one attached ADU and one detached ADU, which actually exceeds the state law. So we provide a bit more flexibility from the statute. Another one is ADUs are not exempt from floor area and building coverage in Menlo Park. We hear every once in a while that other cities just completely exempt the floor area. It becomes a little bit important in Menlo Park, just given what you're allowed to do. So ADUs do count towards the maximum floor area, but you're allowed to exceed the maximum floor area limit on your lot in order to accommodate an ADU. But then if you would like to exceed that maximum floor area limit, a detached ADU is more or less limited to 800 square feet size. So since you are allowed to exceed the floor area limit, the statute, the state law says we're only required to allow exceedance of the floor area limit for one ADU. So in Menlo Park, that's still the case. You're only allowed to exceed for one ADU. So an example of this is, let's say the maximum square footage you can build on your lot is 2,800 square feet, and your main house is already built up to that maximum 2,800 square feet. You are allowed to build an attached or detached ADU up to 800 square feet, but you wouldn't, for example, be able to build an attached ADU that's 400 square feet and a detached ADU that's also 400 square feet to exceed for a combined total of 800 square feet. you'd really only be limited to the one ADU. So there are no separation requirements from the main house to the ADU. It can technically be as close as it wants, as you want it to be. There are potentially additional building and fire code restrictions. So maybe where you put egress windows and doors, an additional fire rating, depending on how close the ADU is to the main house. But technically from a zoning perspective, it can be, as little as a few inches away from the main house. One of the nuances here is that you can attach an ADU to an accessory building. For example, a detached garage or like a storage shed or something like that. But the accessory building requirements still apply to the accessory building portion of the overall structure. So if you, for example, wanted to build a detached ADU that's attached to a garage for the main house, the attached garage portion would have to be, there's a 10-foot minimum separation from the main house. Then it could only be up to 14 feet tall. So if you're thinking of a combined structure, you have a little bit of different regulations for each portion of the structure. And then finally, as Caleb mentioned, J-ADUs, so junior ADUs, require owner occupancy in either the J-ADU or the main house. And we do require a deed restriction to be recorded on the property. It basically says this. We've put together a template for that deed restriction just to try and make it as easy as possible for everybody. We're still finalizing it a little bit, so it's not quite on the website, but it'll be up there fairly soon, and you can ask us for it in the meantime.
In this context, what do you mean by junior ADU? Is it any ADU that's part of the main house, or is it just ones that are less than a certain square footage?
Right. So in this context, it would just be for anything that that is defined, a unit that meets the definition of a junior ADU. So it's built within the existing house, no more than 500 square feet. It can share a bathroom with the main unit. So if it meets that definition, that's when the tenancy, the owner occupancy requirement kicks in. You can build an attached ADU that's bigger than 500 square feet. Maybe it doesn't have interior access to the main house, has its own kitchen and bathroom, and then that's just considered an attached ADU, and it doesn't have this owner occupancy requirement. Okay, so when is a use permit required? Most cases, ADUs are permitted by right, so they only require a building permit, but you are allowed to modify the standard ADU development regulations via a use permit, which is a discretionary action. It's decided upon by the Planning Commission, goes to a public hearing where there could be public comment on the project, and ultimately it's decided by the Planning Commission, not necessarily, or not city staff. So an example of this that we've been asked about a few times is can I build an ADU on top of my detached garage? And the answer is potentially, if you can fit the ADU on top of the garage within the maximum height limit of 16 feet for a detached ADU, then only a building permit is required. But more likely than not, you'd need to exceed 16 feet in height in order to kind of fit the ADU on top of a garage. So that's something that a use permit would be triggered. You have to go through the discretionary review process. You can also modify the setbacks. So potentially corner lots where the functional side or rear property is really what us in planning would consider the front of the property, where you have to meet the front setback. That can be tough to fit an ADU in there. So that's something you could ask through a use permit. And then the maximum size, typically you're limited to, for a detached ADU, 1,000 square feet. But if you have a particularly large lot and have some extra floor area to spare, you could request to build a bigger ADU. So if you are thinking about building an ADU, we always recommend talk to a planner first. We're here to help. We're here to, let you know all the regulations. We have counter hours every day, 1 to 5:30. City Hall is not open at the moment, so most of this is via phone call or email. We do have the ability to set up virtual Zoom chats if you have a question or want to show us plans, share a screen, we can do that as well. Our email is planning@menlopark.org, and our general planning line is there at the bottom of the screen. And with that, I think we can go into question and answer. And I guess I'll start off with the parking, going back to the parking. Generally, like I said, the state kind of limits what we can and can't allow in terms of parking. What we've seen recently is several ADU conversions of garages. The state law says if you convert garages or any existing space into an ADU, you're not actually required to replace the parking, so you don't have to build a new garage, and then you can park sort of anywhere on site.
That's a problem.
You've done
So it's unmuted.
Chris, when you said park anywhere on site, does that mean that we could, behind the hedge that faces the front street curb side of the property, could we put a parking area for one vehicle for the ADU in that essentially our front yard?
You could, yes. So when an ADU does require a parking space, if it doesn't meet any one of the exemptions for parking, state law also says that it can be allowed anywhere on site. So front yard, side yard, build a little parking pad in your backyard if you wanted to. Pretty much anywhere on site that works. Generally, our uncovered parking dimensions, so for a parking space would be 16.5 feet long by 8.5 feet wide. So as long as you have that amount of space somewhere on property, it would be allowable.
I have a question. What do you define as a cooking appliance? Is an oven a cooking appliance?
Right. So for the kitchen to be considered a kitchen, it needs to be a permanent cooking appliance, generally a range, like a stove top. We've had
Can it be a
questions.
permanent oven?
So that's actually a question I got today that I'm looking into. My understanding, I think it has to be like a stove top. You don't have to have an oven if you have a stove top, but I'm not sure if it works the other way around, where if you only have an oven, you don't need a stove top. That's something, like I said, we're looking into, but I believe generally, I think it needs to be a range.
And how many burners? Does it have a minimum?
There's no minimum. We've approved ADUs with 1 or 2. A refrigerator, a mini refrigerator counts for food storage. It doesn't have to be a full-size refrigerator. And then you need to have a sink. Essentially, are the 3 components for a kitchen.
Also, I saw on your website, secondary dwelling units neighbor acknowledgement form that requires a notarized consent from your neighbors in order to, at what point do you need to do that?
So that is actually, that form, it's old. We actually no longer require it. For most ADUs, under our old ADU ordinance, prior to all of the state law changes in 2020, we required a 10-foot rear setback, and that could be reduced through that neighbor acknowledgement. But since state law, since the minimum rear setback is now 4 feet under state law, that doesn't really apply anymore. So we actually need to take that off of our website.
Great.
Thanks for bringing
And how long is the process to get a permit approved?
So again, a lot of this is state mandated. We have a 60-day shot clock, essentially, from the day you submit a building permit application for the ADU to the time we have to issue it, provided that it meets all of the standard development regulations. So you should have permit within 60 days.
And is that the same if you're doing a new build along with the ADU at the same time, or so you need to approve the whole plan, including the new build, in 60 days?
So if you're like building a completely new house, there is some provision that says that if the ADU is sort of wrapped up in some other proposal, that it doesn't have to meet that 60 days. It can go along in this.
You muted yourself.
Yeah, that was weird. Somebody muted me. Sorry about that. So I don't know where I lost you, but basically the state law says if your ADU proposal is wrapped up in a proposal for something else, like a house, the ADU permit can go on the same timeline as the other permit. So I don't know how likely it is that an ADU permit would be delayed by a new build. Probably depends on the house, but I think it can go at the same time, at the same timeline as the main house.
Got it. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. It looks as if most of you are anticipating building an ADU, and I'm interested in moving into one. I just recently moved here from Virginia, and I'm not sure that apartment living is for me. So what is the best way to locate available ADUs other than like realtor.com or something like that?
That's an excellent question. I don't believe the city has a repository of ADUs that we keep. So I don't know if I don't think there's any official way for the city to put you in touch with somebody who has an ADU.
I might interject for a moment. Sorry, I'm just observing, but there is a local nonprofit called Hfa Housing, and they have a home sharing program, and they also match people who are renting ADUs and are interested in being in an ADU. And I'll drop a link to their program in the chat. Sorry to interrupt.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
And I was also going to suggest Nextdoor. If you're on Nextdoor, it's like a neighborhood social media site. And a lot of neighbors in the Willows that I'm in participate there, and people sometimes post availability of ADUs, or if they're looking to rent.
I have a question about the cost of getting a permit. So I own a duplex, and I'm working on a plan for an ADU. And I believe I read somewhere that the cost is around $800 for a single family house, but for multifamily, it jumps way up. Is that still correct?
Chris, maybe I can jump in and take this one. So I'm Kyle with the planning division. That's a really good question. I would direct you to our building division. The front counter staff there can definitely help you with that. I don't know the answer right now off the top of my head. I do know there are different fees structures based on types of permits, and but I don't know if an ADU on a multifamily lot changes the fee. So it's a really great question. What I would do actually is, if you would email either Chris or myself, we can forward your question off to building and work to facilitate a response for you.
Yeah, because I think I saw something that like multifamily treated it like commercial and $8,000 instead of $800, which seems kind of extraordinary. So
I don't want to try to answer the question without knowing those numbers. I certainly agree with your sentiments. So why don't you send an email? You can email me directly. It's K as in Kyle, T as in Timothy, excuse me, and then my last name, P-E-R-A-T-A, so Parada, at menlopark.org. And if you search for me on the website, you'll find it pretty easily. So I can help send that question to the right person, and we can get you a response, okay?
Great, thank you.
I have a question about the different zoning categories. We have a single family dwelling now on an R2 lot. Does the fact that it's an R2 lot change anything related to the ADU?
So the way, let me go back to the website here. So the way these are split up between single family and multifamily is what the use of the lot is. So if you are in an R2 zoning district, even though you're zoned for multiple units, if you have a single family house on the property, it's a single family use, and the single family ADU regulations would apply.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, go ahead.
I have a question in that we're considering turning our detached garage into an ADU. So is there still a requirement around that in terms of lot size at all? Around be able to have an ADU in a certain minimum lot size? And then second question is around elevation requirements of this ADU. Our garage was built, in the 40s. And so that's a question there. Yeah, I think that's my main questions.
Right. So there's no more minimum lot size anymore. The state got rid of that. So it doesn't matter if you're on a big lot or small lot. If you're in a residentially zoned property, you can build an ADU. So converting the garage shouldn't be an issue from that standpoint. As far as the elevation, you're talking about like a flood zone elevation?
Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the way conversions work is they have to be brought up to current building standards, essentially. So if the garage was built back in the 40s and you're kind of at ground level in the flood zone, in order to do all the other necessary work to bring it up to code, you'd also have to raise the floor out of the zone, flood zone. So typically that's about, we require 12 inches above elevation for the property. So that would need to occur.
Okay. And do you know, is there any rules around Airbnb type of thing for an ADU?
Yeah,
in Menlo Park?
So it's actually a state law as well. Short-term rentals, as they're called, are not allowed for the next 5, or basically for ADUs built between 2020 and 2025. After that, the city can decide whether they want to allow Airbnbs in ADUs, but for now, they're not allowed.
Thank you.
Hi, I had a question around the just understanding what the calculating your floor area limit for your home and your ADU based on your property.
Mm-hmm.
So what I read was you can build it to 50%, 1,000 square feet or 50% of your house, but assuming that whatever the floor area limit is for your property. So how do you calculate that?
Right. So that's a good question. Generally, the floor area limit in Menlo Park is based on the lot size.
Right.
So let's just do a quick example. Let's pick a random lot. So just based on the lot size here, the approximate floor area limit is about 3,800. So the way the ADU ordinance is written in Menlo Park is essentially you're allowed to exceed the maximum floor area limit by up to 800 square feet to accommodate an ADU. And that's reworked slightly from what the state law says. So for example, if your lot has a limit of 3,800 square feet, you can build a main house up to 3,800 square feet, and then in addition to that, build an ADU, either attached or detached, up to 800 square feet.
And how is that, is the floor area limits, where do we find those? That's what I was really trying to figure out, is on this map, is that, or where do we find them?
So it's really based on your actual lot size. So typically what happens, if you're thinking about building something, the building division, we require a survey. So the survey will tell you sort of exactly where the property lines are, and exactly how big the property is. And then we can do a calculation on that. So that's how we get the floor area limit.
Right, but is there, for us homeowners to start out, is there a simple way for us to say there's some range that before we do all that we would be roughly looking at, just to understand viability?
Right. So for properties, let's, for example, just take our single family zoning districts. If you have a lot that's between 5,000 square feet and 7,000 square feet, this applies to all properties. Your floor area limit is 2,800 square feet. So if your particular property is anywhere in that range, just think 2,800. Above that, you start getting into a calculation. It's basically just 25% of the area above 7,000 square feet. And then that adds to that base 2,800 square foot floor area limit.
Is this map that you're looking at right now, that you just were looking at, is that homeowner accessible, that would just tell you what your floor area is?
We do have a public facing version of this, and I apologize, I don't know exactly where it is on the new webpage yet. It's brand new. I think if you search it, it comes up pretty easily. But this is what the public facing GIS map looks like. You can look up zoning, you can search an address. I think that should.
Maybe you could just drop the URL in the link and we can see if we're able to access it.
It's a good idea.
Maybe just one other thing for Chris here, or to keep in mind that he's talking about here, is so this link will change over in the near future. So that's kind of what there's the beta version of our website, and this is the old version here. So the link is good for a little bit, but if you have trouble finding it, please email Chris and he can definitely get you the what will become the new link, or the permanent link, I guess is the better way to look at it. Chris, what other material might be helpful is the single family zoning ordinance handout that we have.
Yeah, I was just about to bring that up.
The calculation, so that might be a good visual for everyone here.
Yeah. So we do have this handout. It has a lot of information. First thing is how to calculate your floor area limit. So it kind of breaks it down. For example, 10,000 square foot lot, 2,800 square feet plus 25% of the difference between your lot size and 7,000 square feet. And then that gives you a floor area limit of 3,550. So let me also drop this in the chat. I don't know if it goes to everybody in the county-wide webinar, just us. But hopefully you all can see that.
Hi, I have a quick question. Do you have to get a use permit if you're putting an ADU on a non-conforming lot if it doesn't meet the minimum width or minimum depth?
No. So as long as the ADU itself meets the standard ADU development regulations, the ADU does not need a use permit.
And what if it's being built in conjunction with a home that otherwise meets all the standards of the city, but the lot itself is non-conforming?
Right. That was going to be the follow-up. So if let's say you have a substandard lot and you are proposing a new 2-story home. So the home, it's the main house triggers a use permit that has to go through discretionary review, go to the planning commission. The ADU still does not. The ADU is exempt from discretionary review. So we've seen a few of these. Sometimes applicants put like if it's a detached ADU, sometimes they put it on the use permit plan set. Sometimes that helps for sort of reference, but the planning commission doesn't have the authority to really discuss or talk about the ADU, only the main house.
And is that the same for an attached ADU?
It is, but that gets into a little bit of a sort of gray area where the planning commission has purview over sort of everything but the attached ADU. Obviously, in that case, I know we have one of these projects going right now. The ADU is included in the plan set, but the planning commission couldn't talk about like the added massing to the house because of the ADU. Couldn't talk about the extra floor area in the house because of the ADU. So that one is a little bit tricky, but technically still the planning commission can talk about it.
Hi there. I also have a question about garage conversion still. So my neighbors had told me that the city of Menlo Park requires some sort of a place to, park your car inside, at least a carport or something that can be converted to a garage. Mm-hmm. Is that still true under this ADU new laws?
If you convert your garage or carport into an ADU, no, you're not required to replace the parking with another garage. You're not really required to replace any parking if you can convert the garage. So that's a little bit up to you as the property owner to decide if you want a garage, but it wouldn't be required.
Okay, thank you.
Along those lines of parking, can we park in an alley?
I don't believe so. If an ADU requires an extra parking space, let's say it's not a garage conversion or it's not exempt for, say, being near transit, the required parking space would need to be shown on site. So you can have your required parking space, at least from the plan set, be shown in the alley. I think that's the best way to answer that question.
Okay, thanks. I have another question. If there's,
I
so
know we're sort of running low on time, and Caleb maybe can stop
Or-
us if
yeah,
we're
or I could
running
just-
over, but
yeah, I'll just set up an appointment. I think actually maybe that's the best next step for me.
we can try and answer it now. But like I said, if anybody has any other questions, you can email either the planning general line. My email is crturner, TURNER, at menlopark.org, and I can answer questions, but let's see if we can answer it now.
Okay, if I have a accessory structure that the city already has all the planning docs for, and I'd like that to get considered as an ADU, is that something that is relatively straightforward since you all have everything already?
It's straightforward in terms of you'd be allowed to convert it. At that point, it's somewhat exempt from setback requirements. You would still need to provide a plan set with the building permit application for the work that would need to be done to bring it up to code. It may be a little bit easier for your designer architect if the plans are somewhat already there, but you would still need to provide a plan set.
Even if it's the same plan, like I wouldn't plan on changing anything if I don't have to. I'll follow up.
Yeah, I think that's a good question to follow up on. Generally, I mean, if it's, I don't know the nature of the shed building, but let's say if it's just a storage shed, I'm assuming there'd probably be a decent amount of work that would need to be done to bring it up to code for a living space, for a dwelling. So that'll require at least probably some electrical and maybe additional mechanical.
No.
So, but that's a good question. Maybe send me an email.
Just a quick question. If you were going to do a build with just a new build and you were going to add the ADU and you said it's part of it would probably go along with the building process, how far behind is the city in planning and approving permits at this point? Like how long is it usually taking once you submit your proposal to kind of go through the approval, get the approval for permits?
Just the standard building permit, or are you?
Well, the standing building permit along with the ADU, if we were to do both.
That may be a better question for the building division. I know.
Or how about
they're very
approval
busy.
of the plan, approval of the plans?
Right. I mean, if it's a new house, I'd say probably minimum 2 to 3 months, if not a little bit longer. I know we're pretty inundated with building permit applications now. So I would count on at least a few months.
So is it still like at one point I had heard it was like 8 or 9? It's not that long anymore. It's closer to like maybe 6 or 5 or 4 or 3.
That may be a better question for the building division, to be honest.
Okay.
Maybe I can also jump in. That was a good answer, Chris. The other kind of caveat is it does depend on a number of factors, of course. More complete plans will be able to be reviewed and signed off on quicker. So there's a number of factors that go into that. Certainly, the planning division strives to review the first round within 3 to 4 weeks. And so that, in terms of comments coming back from the city. Planning is looking about 3 to 4 is the goal. I will acknowledge that we don't always make that. Sometimes to Chris's point, there's a lot of plans that come in waves, and it can be difficult to provide the first round of comments in that timeline. But the standard goal is to provide comments out from the planning division within 3 to 4 weeks. And other divisions are kind of right around the same. But we'll definitely need to check in with building for what things are currently running. So the kind of varied answer of a couple months, from that 3 to 6 range is probably pretty reasonable for a pretty comprehensive plan set submittal for a new single family home, plus or minus the ADU. The ADU is probably inconsequential to that timeline.
Okay. Thank you.
To Chris's point earlier in the presentation, I'll just chime in real quick. Reaching out to planning before an ADU is great, and reaching out building project is also helpful to go through the planning requirements, review process, the zoning regulations for a single family lot or a multifamily lot are still pretty complex. And so we do have counter hours in the afternoon, right now, emails and phone calls, but we can certainly set up appointments, and a video call to go over plans like Chris mentioned. And so that's definitely a great resource to use before embarking too far down any project, just to understand floor area limit, building height, setbacks, review process. There was a couple messages or statements, about the use permit process, which is the discretionary design review effectively for some single family homes if certain criteria are met. So definitely use that resource to speak with a counter planner to kind of go through that process, and that'll help inform the plan set submittal, which will ultimately help, I think, shorten the timeline for the permit review, whether it's a building permit only or a use permit. So I spoke too much. I told Chris I wouldn't chime in, so sorry, Chris. Let me turn it back to you.
No worries. Gave me a chance. I realized I was putting the links directly to one person. So I added a few links to the website, our single family developments handout, and the city's ACA SLA citizen access portal into the chat. So everybody should be able to see that now. Any other questions at this point?
Thank you.
Cool. Sounds good. Like I said, if you have any other questions, just send us an email and a planner will get back to you.
And thank you everyone for joining us this evening. And thank you, Chris, for the presentation and the question and answer. Really appreciate it. I just want to extend the thank you to you for the presentation from the planning division as well, since you took this on tonight. So thank you for that. And thank you everyone for attending.
Thanks, Caleb, for putting it out from the county side.
Our pleasure. Thank you to everyone for coming, and a special thank you to the city of Menlo Park for coming out tonight. I also know that they are the last city standing this evening. Everyone else is already wrapped up. So